Welcome back to the next episode of Super Mario Brothers. I got here and then I started going without thinking about it, so I'm about 5 seconds into this level. Don't be alarmed. Alright, so I got here without dying and without getting hit, so that should show how much better I do when I'm not having to talk at the same time. So, oh, come on, get out of here. Silly timer. Stop it. Oh, refresh, okay. So, here we go. Now, Nintendo started a long time ago as a gaming company before video games. They did Hanafuda cards, like Japanese sex hotels, and crazy stuff like that. And they were doing that for a long time. 100-year-old company? Something, 80-year, something like. They've been around for a while, and it was all within the same family, the Sakamoto family. I can't remember. And they decided to start getting into the gaming business when arcade gaming became really popular. With, Taito and Space Invaders being huge, and Pong, and then Namco and Pac-Man, and stuff like that. Quicks, Chicks? I have no idea how to say QIX's name. Anyway, they decided to try their hand at it. They got involved in hardware, and they developed Donkey Kong. Shigeru Miyamoto was put in charge of the design and planning, and he made a very fun and addictive game that was wildly successful and changed everything. Because that's how Miyamoto rolls. The guy is just a game design brilliant genius. I kind of adore him. I would love to meet him. Woo! I accidentally found that. That was cool. Don't mess this up! That gets me half the time. That jump is actually slightly tricky if you don't take a little care. Come on. Okay. Here we go. Now that I have a Fire Flower too, this next stage is a lot easier with the Fire Flower, if I can keep it, so we'll see how I do. And Donkey Kong was a big deal, and it introduced Donkey Kong and Mario, although he was Jumpman. And he was a carpenter, not a plumber. He's a man of many trades. I don't really consider, personally, I mean, everyone else in the world does, but I don't personally consider any of the really old, pre-Super Mario Brothers Mario-related stuff to be canon at all. Including the show, the original cartoon and stuff. Some people might want to and say, hey, it was canonized by Mario Brothers 2. Yeah, sure, whatever, Parts of that, maybe, but I don't buy any of the crap that he's actually from Brooklyn. Both of them, but whatever, the bygones be bygones. So, anyway, that was where they first showed up. And Pauline, who really hasn't shown up since then, except, like, Donkey Kong Jr., Minis, First Mario, whatever those... I've actually never really played those games, don't care about them. Yeah, I got through this, and I found the hidden coin block, and that's not going to help me much, because I don't think I'm going to get any more coins. Alright, here we go, last stage. This castle is an excellent last castle. It's hard, it's grueling, it's confusing, and overwhelming. It's a perfect final stage. But it's so frustrating that there's no faster way to get back to it if you game over. Are you kidding me? No! That is such... I'm Zen, I'm cool, I'm cool! Okay, so... that sucks. I wanted to actually legitimately kill Bowser. As much as he can be killed, since he seems to be totally unfazed by lava, and falls in it at the end of every Mario game. Anyway. That's a bummer. Now I can't get hit. And that's actually the bigger bummer, because I mess this stage up fairly often, especially after this section. Now, what I have to explain is every single pipe, I swear, you can go down them. But, if you go down the wrong pipe, you get sent back to the beginning of that section. And that slows you down significantly. And confuses you, so you have to find the right pipe. I accidentally figured out the system myself without having to look it up. Ugh, got it. Okay, can I get through him? Can I do it? I did it! I did it! I beat the game! Alright! Woohoo! Go! Go, Mario! Thank you, Mario! Your quest is over, and listen to that new music. I think that's just that loop over and over again. Oh, it's so satisfying to hear something after actually finding the real princess who was much taller than you when you're not Super Mario. Your quest is over. We present you a new quest. Push button B to select a world. So if you hit start, it just pauses. So the only way to get past this is to hit B. And then when you start over, it actually is, it's like hard mode. I don't know what exactly you'd want to call it, but that is not a Goomba, that's a Buzzy Beetle. And yes, all of the enemies are different in this playthrough. Harder, typically, faster. For the most part, I think that's really it. It's just enemies are tougher. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same game for the most part. Oh, and one thing here, you'll notice I was small, but because I had hit the block before I got small, instead of being a mushroom, it had still popped out a flower. But it didn't matter, because when I touched it, it didn't give me a flower power, it went just to Super Mario. So this game was tough. Compared to all the other Marios, except for, you know, like Lost Levels. Comparatively, the hardest game in the series. There's no question about it. This game's very tough to play through, especially the later stages. I'm actually going to run down the clock a little bit since this episode's short, and I don't want it to end short, and I don't feel like pasting on the last one. So, while I'm running through this, I'll just not give a crap out while I do, and I'll just chat. Donkey Kong did very, very, very well. It was one of the most successful arcade games of all of them. And that actually started unintentionally, just because of its fandom. Really getting involved in, you know, player fanaticism and competitions, competitiveness, where you had the first world champion of a game ever. And that was, oh, I don't even remember his name, but you can check him out. He's got some interesting videos on YouTube of him trying to re-break his record and, you know, the power being pulled on his box or something like that. It's kind of funny. I've actually watched a little bit of that. And they've got documentaries about him and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy. But that started it all. It's kind of fun. Or at least that popularized it, I should say. And then, you know, they made Donkey Kong Jr., which is Donkey Kong 2, and Donkey Kong 3, which was just, I think that was Donkey Kong Jr. again? I'm not really sure. But with, like, you know, different levels or whatever. But, you know, those showed, really, not as tight as this by any means, but comparatively tight controls. A lot of gameplay mechanics and controls before Donkey Kong and moving Jumpman around were really simple. You know, there was moving left, moving right, maybe a little jump, maybe a jump, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. You know, they were very simplified controls, and Jumpman wasn't too much better than that, but it was a little tighter and a little more interesting because there was some real platforming in there. You know, having to jump over barrels, climb ladders, and go left and right and up and down and move around, try to get through the treachery. And it was cool. Definitely an obvious precursor to what became Mario. And it was kind of interesting to see Donkey Kong Jr., where, you know, Jumpman Mario was the bad guy. He had captured Donkey Kong, and you played his son, Donkey Kong Jr., having to come rescue him. Supposedly, either that Donkey Kong Jr. is Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong Country, or if you want to believe the game theorists, that was Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong Country's father. And so the original Donkey Kong is Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong Country's grandfather. Ah, I'm so tired of saying the phrase Donkey Kong. Anyway, whatever. So then, Mario Bros. Was released, not Super Mario Brothers. And several of you may have found it out the hard way in the Virtual Console. But no, Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. Are two different games entirely. Mario Bros. Came first, was just an arcade game, and it's essentially just that competitive mini-game from Super Mario Bros. 3. where if you had two players playing, and you would take your player onto where the other player's holding place was on the world map, you stepped on there and hit the button, you could enter into a little mini-game, for those of you who don't know. And it involved, you know, pipes and crabs and turtles and the POW block. And you would basically be competing to kill each other and outlast and out-survive each other. And, it was just... I was doing well, too. It was just entirely competitive in nature, and very limited. I don't even know if there were multiple levels. There might have been, but they were extremely similar. And however, that did involve, I think, many of the more tightened controls. Not quite to this level, if I remember right, but still very similar. And it had Mario and Luigi? I don't know if Luigi was in that. I don't know what his color scheme was like. He's in this. If you play two players and you die as Mario and come in with the second player, he's green. He's Luigi. And that may have started with the original Mario Bros. I'm actually not sure. I'm kind of curious. I gotta check that out. But anyway, so that came first. And then, you know, after Nintendo had decided to go into the console industry and, you know, bring it home, since they were in Japan, while all the consoles at that point, for the most part, you know, were all in America. They were all, you know, Atari, Coleco, and Mattel. They were all American companies, and Magnavox with the Odyssey, the original console. They decided to bring it home. And also to not make a lot of the same mistakes that American companies were making. Which was to not have any kind of quality control for the games released for their consoles. But also, you know, they weren't... A lot of video game developers and publishers at the time were totally reckless with copyright and patenting. Like, as in, they didn't do it, like, at all. And so, people could just make clones of their games from arcade games or from earlier released games, and, you know, clones that had very little to offer that was different, or was really just poorly done in general, and they just wanted to cash in on the success of someone else's earlier made and, you know, successfully done and successfully received work. So the video game console market just got flooded with garbage. A lot of games that, you know, they would release box art with awesome looking paintings, but that looked, you know, didn't reveal at all how crappy the games actually look. And with gameplay, or, you know, a total lack of good gameplay or controls that were just garbage. You know, because they were just trying to capitalize on this fast-growing market. I mean, gaming was huge in the early 80s. Huge. Arcade gaming by itself was monstrous. This is a little factoid I like to share when I can. That was close. Holy crap. I'm doing really well on this run. And, I mean, there was one year, I don't know if it was 82 or... Oh, suck! That's a bit of a bummer. Anyway, arcade gaming did so well that at one point, they were making more off of quarters than the Hollywood movie industry and the professional music industries combined. That's insane, especially considering that this was, you know, Star Wars and Jaws eras, and, dang it, I was doing so well, too. Let's see if I can do this. I've already run past the 10 minutes, but, you know, I'm gonna have fun with this. I mean, that's how huge arcade gaming by itself was. And console gaming was right there with it, and so was computer gaming. They were all doing really well. Not probably to the same level as... Wow, I'm getting lazy. Not to the same level as arcade gaming, because arcade gaming was just huge, but still, they were a big deal. And because a lot of games were released that were just garbage for consoles, you know, it was harder to do that with arcades, because making an arcade game was, you know, a much more significant risk, because you had to put in all sorts of money for the cabinet and the hardware and, you know, the CPUs and the video and everything like that. It was just a much more significant risk and investment to make an arcade game than a console game, where a lot of the heavy lifting was already done by the console. So, shoot! I was not being careful enough. Come on, give me my thing. No! Oh, that was close. Shoot. Okay, well I made it past them, so let's see if I can beat this game. On hard mode, technically. So a lot of games were coming out that were just unproven, and a lot of people didn't really have any good way of knowing what they were getting. Games would come up with similar names to what was already released, and so people would get tricked into buying something they thought they were, you know, they thought it was one thing, it turned out to not be. And they wouldn't know until they got it and realized, wait, this isn't the same, or you know, also, this isn't what it was in the arcade, this sucks. And it was really hard to know how bad it was, aside from word of mouth, because, you know, it was pre-internet and stuff like that, so... console gaming in America was very disappointing after a while. Just because all these problems were happening. And people were becoming disenchanted with dropping lots of money on consoles and console games, which were expensive. Way more expensive than they are now. At least from what I remember. And especially, you know, adjusted for inflation. Oh yeah. That running, you know, dumping money on something that ended up... Are you kidding me? On something that ended up sucking was a big problem. And so those were really the biggest driving factors behind why console gaming ended up failing. On top of the amazing failures of specifically games like E.T. and Pac-Man. Those are two of the most potent examples. But all those things combined to make the American console industry just completely destroy itself. Like, it seriously ran itself into the ground, and basically didn't exist anymore. And Nintendo decided to do things differently with their Famicom, sort of family computer. They were very, very careful with what games were going to be released for their systems, so they would not allow them to get through their protection, the piracy protection and stuff like that, unless they gave them the seal of approval. So they would actually have the developers send them their games, that they could be tested and approved, to have a basic set of quality. And I mean, this is significant. A lot of games were being released and sold that were completely unplayable. This is not a minor thing. I did it! I beat the game on hard mode, you guys! You got to see the ending twice! GAMEpoch, offering more for... well, for still free, but... Anyway, Nintendo also decided to put a lot of effort into their own in-house gaming. So they developed, you know, Balloon Fight and Ice Climb... I think they made Ice Climbers. And, you know, Punch-Out! And eventually, you know, Mario and Zelda, which changed everything, along with like Dragon Quest, and then you know, came Ninja Gaiden and Castlevania and Ghosts and Goblins for a while was a huge deal, and all these early games that just changed everything, absolutely everything. So this game is an absolute masterpiece. It is a true gem, and it stands today to be, I think, the most important game of all time. Not my favorite, and it's dated. Absolutely dated. I think it's worth playing the original version just for the sake of the nostalgia and to see what it was like when it came out and to try to feel and appreciate what it was and what it meant to us. I mean, I was born right after this game came out in early 1986, so I was raised with this game. My earliest memories include this, Final Fantasy, Dragon Warrior, Zelda. You know, I just... that's what I know. This defines my childhood. Memories of seeing this, hearing the sounds, playing it, holding the controller, even if I wasn't good until I was like 4 or 5, you know? That just... this... it means so much to me. And it means a lot to everybody. This was a huge deal. This exploded in America. It went way past anything that had ever happened in console gaming before this came out. The Nintendo just flew off the shelves, and that was a big deal. A lot of video games, games and game consoles were sold through toy stores. We didn't have GameStop and EB Games and all that stuff. We didn't have that back then. They were sold through Toys R Us and Sears, you know, toy stores. And a lot of toy store owners felt like there was going to be a fad, and then when everything crashed, they helped it crash because they stopped selling stuff. They're like, nope, anything to do with video games, we're not doing, because people are just returning everything we sell them. Or they won't buy them, and it's just lost money. We're not doing it. I mean, apparently the rumor where they went and dumped a lot of returned and unsold copies of E.T. and Pac-Man and lots of other crappy games in the desert in Western America turned out to be true. I mean, they just made a documentary in the past year or so showing that they found one of these dumpsters. That's amazing. And it shows how bad the situation really was here in America. Nintendo had to really finagle in the Nintendo to get it sold. They had to call it the Nintendo Entertainment System instead of any kind of video game console. Nothing like that was in the game. They also had to sell a robot toy alongside the system to get it to sell it first. And to let the gaming stores accept that, yeah, sure, or the toy stores to accept these are toys. Because they come with toys. Okay, we'll do it. They also had to really emphasize, look, we are controlling the quality of the games that are being released for these systems so that they're not going to be just pure junk. You can trust us, you can sell these, and here's Mario Brothers. Trust me, it's a great game. They're going to love it. And Mario Brothers and the Nintendo were some of the best-selling things for decades. Until the DS and the PlayStation 2, and then eventually the Wii. So, big deal. Big deal. And changed everything. And reintroduced console gaming to the world, and it hasn't quit since. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's a huge deal. We're talking numbers that are significant. Comparing some of these huge game releases in numbers of sales and dollar amounts, and how much they're spending on these games to some of the huge big box office films that are coming out. So, nothing to sneer at anymore. And I think it's all thanks to this game. So that's why I started with this. From here on out, this series is going to chronologically go through all the major games that came out in the order that they were released. When they were released, and wherever they came out. So if games came out in Japan first, or America first, or whatever, it'll be in the order that they came out wherever they came out first. So, I'm glad you got to see me beat this game twice. That was pretty unexpected. And I'm looking forward to doing more games. Next is Ghosts and Goblins. So thanks for checking into GamePoch. I am MystikDan, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.